bring you another 7:20 the time. You might have some thoughts on this. This relates to the American Bully XL dog, which is being added to the list of banned dogs in England and Wales, and confirmation really of the dates and the time frames around that. From February next year, it'll be illegal to own one unless the owner has successfully applied for it to be exempt. So in the coming weeks, that ban is going to come into force. Let's get some thoughts from Sue Gilmore now on BBC Essex, who's a dog behaviourist, owner of the Essex Dog Academy in Maldon. Sue, good morning to you.
Good morning, Sonia.
Morning. Thank you for coming on. Now, first off, what do you make of specific breeds being banned? Because I know not everyone is supportive of that as an idea, as legislation. Do you think it's right to ban specific breeds?
Well, the legislation actually takes into consideration the type, as in when the pit bull and the other three were banned, they said that any pit bull type, so it's up to the police or an expert witness to decide who is going to, what dog is going to be banned and what is not. So it's a bit of a broad brushstroke, but to include XL or Bully XLs as they are, I think is a move towards protecting the public, to be honest, because there are too many of these dogs which are bred for fighting. And it's not only the Bully XL, it's originally the Mastiffs and similar dogs, very, very powerful dogs. And they can be, up to 8-9 stone, which is huge really for a dog. And we've got to ask ourselves if in our communities we need dogs of that nature, because we want to enjoy our dogs. But if we're fearful of taking them out, I mean, the power of an XL Bully with somebody on the end of the lead who is inexperienced or not physically capable of restraining the dog, which very few people are once they decide to go. We've got to think about the wider picture of people who don't like dogs, people who like to go to a park to enjoy a walk. And if they're confronted with these dogs, which basically all dogs are wild animals with the corners knocked off, to domesticate them. So there's always that innate character trait that allows a dog, or is there in a dog, present in a dog, that is aggressive, when triggered. So I think it was an inevitability, frankly. I'm not saying I'm totally for banning breeds, but, in the circumstances, I think it was an inevitability.
I spoke to, when the government first confirmed they were going to ban XL Bully dogs, I spoke to someone who owns an XL Bully. And in fact, I was speaking to them on Zoom, Sue, so I could see the dog as well. And he was saying it's devastating. She was saying it's a real addition to her family. She loves her dog. Her dog's soft as anything, really well behaved. Doesn't it come down to the owners rather than the dog? I take the point that any dog can turn, but surely responsible owners are being penalised quite harshly here.
Well, it's always the case, isn't it, that the people who adhere to the law also fall foul of the law because of the people who don't adhere to the law in the first place. That makes sense. But we've got so many dogs in this country. It's said to be 12, 13 million dogs. And in my experience, not every owner is a responsible owner, even though they might appear to be quite a sensible person. When it comes to owning the dog, there's very much a laissez-faire attitude to the dog. When you ban a breed, one would imagine that the breed would actually fade into the memory, but we've still got nearly 3,500 registered pit bulls in this country. Now, bearing in mind that the Dangerous Dogs Act came in 1991, that makes those dogs quite elderly, doesn't it, really? But we've got that amount of dogs there, so they're still present in the country, even though the pit bull is banned.
Yeah, I might get on to that because there's this exemption certificate, isn't there? So you stay there. I just want to bring in Joe Colling Nutkins, who runs dog training for Essex and Suffolk, based in Ardleigh. And you've recently run a webinar on how to muzzle train, Joe. Good morning to you. Thank you for coming on as well.
Hello, thank you for talking to me.
What do you think then? We've just been hearing from Sue. In your experience, what do you think about the ban and the effectiveness of it?
Personally, I'm not a fan of banning a specific breed type. As was just mentioned, it is type, it's not one breed. So it's a really wide margin. You know, there's going to be dogs that are caught under this, that will continue to be caught under this, that are not anything to do with an XL bully or any size bully for that matter, don't maybe have the same characteristics, the temperament, but because they come under the measurements and the type and they look like it, will fall under it, which I know from talking to a lot of people that some are clients, some are not clients, people are panicking, they're scared, they're really worried about their dogs, even though they haven't got an XL bully. They've actually got pedigree papers to say what their dog is, but that means nothing because the ban on a breed type is all down to measurements and how it looks. So if you've got paperwork, if you've got DNA proof of what your dog is, it doesn't mean anything at all. So a blanket ban on a breed type is quite scary for people that it doesn't affect. And I appreciate the government has to do something. Has to do something to help what's going on, because looking at the statistics that came out yesterday, the attacks from XL bullies in the last, this year has been quite staggering, let alone the last few weeks and the last few months has been really quite scary. There's something that needs to be done, even if it's just an awareness thing. But planning, okay, that's going to be coming into place. There's not a lot we can do about that. But there's a lot of education that needs to go out there as well. And as I mentioned about responsible dog ownership, you know, the responsible dog ownership is something that's mentioned a lot in dog training and dog behaviour. And but if you don't really know what that means, you might think you're responsible, but you might not actually be. So responsible might be, you know, I know my dog's friendly, so I let it go over to other dogs because I know it's not going to do something. That doesn't make you responsible. It just means you've been quite lucky. But so education is needed for all different types of breeds. You know, the bigger, stronger breed can potentially cause a lot more damage and can be really scary. You know, I've got family members and friends that aren't dog people at all. You know, they've got other pets, dogs just aren't their thing. And if they're out with me in a dog walk, I've got terriers myself. But I've had like Chocolate Labrador, he was huge. He was female, but he's bigger than most male Chocolate Labs. And he would probably come close to being untyped, to be honest, because her head was huge. But we've been out on the walk and there's been, you know, big breeds up ahead and people that are with me have literally stood behind me. I mean, I'm only 5 foot. I'm not really much of a defence, but they stood behind me because they've just seen a dog and panicked and been scared. And I can totally appreciate why they had to bring a ban in to try and help the public quickly. You have to do something very, very quickly. But it's education. There's so much education needs to be out there on looking after your own dog. What is responsible ownership at the end of the day? What we should and shouldn't be doing to keep our dogs safe, other people's dogs, other people in general, other pets. You know, I own 150 animals in my property. I've got chickens and ducks and quail and parrots that are now joining in. And, you know, I want my animals safe. I don't want someone else's dog to come onto my property and you know, take them out. But I make sure that all of my animals are nice and safe, and I make sure that my dogs are listening to me, that they're safe. If I am not sure, then they're on leads and long lines, things like that. But that's me. The next person might think that they are being responsible, but aren't doing that. You know,
but they haven't. I take your point completely on that. And how do we? I've got to go to the news very shortly, but I just wanted to ask Jo, how do we ensure then that everyone has the same understanding of what a responsible owner is?
It's a real difficult one, isn't it? I mean, again, everyone needs to come together. People that are, I mean, to get this ban, a lot of experts in the dog community were called upon by the government, but a lot of the people's advice wasn't taken. You know, there is the Kennel Club, everyone's heard of them. They could be perhaps getting together with a lot of officials and dog people to get a guideline, you know, things like dog licenses. If they came back in, you needed to have some sort of foundation training in understanding what responsible ownership is. So in for example, in the guidelines, if you own an XL Bully, once you've still registered them, they have to be on lead. It just is on lead. It doesn't mention the length of lead. It doesn't mention if it has to be a flexi or a standard lead, or it has got to have a secure class or anything. It doesn't have any actual specifics on there, which means you can have an XL Bully on lead, but they're on a 10-foot lead. That's not really open close.
Yeah, it's open to interpretation, isn't it? Quite a lot. Joe, thank you. Thank you very much for coming on. Sue, very briefly as well, because I've got to go to the news. People can apply for an exemption certificate. So is it really a ban? Because as you said, there's a load of pit bulls still registered. So it's not a total ban, is it?
At the moment, it's not, but I think they've considered the mental health effects of people having their dogs confiscated, as it were. So by having the dog neutered, keeping it muzzled and on lead, having third-party liability and microchips, and also having the gardens secure with a really solid high fence, things like that will enable people to keep those dogs. And if they do love their dogs as much as they claim, then they're not going to be too worried about doing, minor things like that in order to continue to enjoy their beloved pet.
Sue, thank you.
Much better than, yeah.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you for coming on, both Joe and Sue, talking to us. If you've got some thoughts, maybe you own an XL Bully. We have heard from owners of that particular dog type when we've covered this story in the past. If you've got thoughts on it, 0800 111 4041 is our number. Let's bring you up to date with the rest.